I don't remember the last time Daniel looked at me like I was someone worth noticing. At dinner now, he glances past me to the television. His hands, rough from years of home repair he never finished, rest motionless on the table. We don't talk much. We haven't in years. It's funny, in a cruel way, how someone can be so present and yet feel 100 miles away. That's why I noticed Alec. Not suddenly. Not in one sweeping, forbidden epiphany. It was slower than that. Like something shifting just beneath the surface. A quiet current pulling against my foundations. It began with the graduation dance. His voice had cracked over the phone, uncertain. "Mom, can you come with me to rehearsal? They need us to practice with partners, but..." Some of the girls didn't show up. His voice still held that boyish charm, but there was an undercurrent of embarrassment. "Of course," I said without hesitation. I hadn't planned to go to the school auditorium that afternoon. I hadn't even planned to leave the house. But when Alec asked, something in me stirred. Reason. Purpose. He met me at the entrance, dressed in jeans and a crisp white shirt I didn't recognize. "It's just rehearsal," he said quickly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You don't have to." I stepped closer and smoothed a wrinkle near his collar. "Let me help," I said softly. He looked at me, then really looked, and there was the shift. Not romantic. Not yet. Just an acknowledgement that we were seeing each other differently. The music started. Something soft and slow, the kind of song teenagers roll their eyes at but secretly love. And Alec took my hand with a nervous smile. We began to dance. His hand found my waist, cautious, respectful. My other hand rested on his shoulder. I could feel the tension in him, the fear of making it weird, of crossing some invisible line. But I didn't pull away. We moved slowly, and something warm curled in my chest. Something dangerous. "You're good at this," I said, trying to lighten the moment. He laughed softly. "You're just being nice." "I'm serious." Eyes met. For a moment we simply moved. The world outside the gymnasium blurred. There were no students, no teachers. Just the music and a strange new silence pressing between us. When it ended, I stepped back quickly. Too quickly. "Thanks for helping," he said, clearing his throat. "Of course," I said again, though the words caught in my throat this time. I didn't know then that it would stay with me. The heat of his hand, the way he'd looked at me without judgment or expectation. The way it had made me feel young again. Not because he was younger, but because for the first time in years I felt seen. That night, Daniel fell asleep in front of the TV, snoring softly through a war documentary. I went upstairs alone, locked the bathroom door, and stared at my reflection for a long time. I didn't look 19 anymore. But for a moment on that dance floor I had felt it. And I hated myself for how much I missed that feeling. The days that followed were laced with glances I couldn't decipher. Alec lingered longer at breakfast. He brushed my shoulder a second too long when passing the milk. He asked how my day had gone when no one else ever did. Maybe I imagined it. But then came the night of the real graduation dance. Daniel didn't go. He claimed he had work to finish, but I knew it was just another excuse to stay detached. Alec had insisted I come. I stood in the back of the auditorium, watching the students pair off, swirl across the floor like mismatched puzzle pieces. And then I saw him. He was alone. Too many boys, not enough girls. He stood awkwardly near the edge of the dance floor, scanning the room. His shoulders slumped. I moved before I could stop myself. "May I have this dance?" I asked lightly. His eyes flicked to mine, surprised but grateful. He took my hand. This time it was different. The lights were dim. The music slow. We moved together as though there was no one else in the room. My hand curled against the nape of his neck. His breath grazed my cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For being here. For always showing up. For this." I didn't know how to respond. My throat tightened. I pulled away gently. "I think we've danced enough for one night." His eyes searched mine. And though he said nothing, I knew he felt it too. The line we weren't meant to cross, trembling beneath our feet. Later, when we got home, I went to my room without a word. My heart beat like thunder in my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. The doorknob turned. "Alec," I whispered. He didn't step inside. Just stood in the doorway. "Can you stay?" he asked, barely audible. My breath caught. It was innocent, and yet nothing about it felt simple. He nodded. We lay side by side, fully dressed, on top of the covers. Neither of us spoke. We didn't touch. But the silence was thunderous with everything we couldn't say. And when he turned to face me in the dark, I felt it again. The unbearable tenderness of being seen. After that night, something invisible but undeniable settled between us. We didn't talk about what happened. Not that there was anything to talk about, not technically. But I could feel it in the way Alec looked at me now. Something had shifted, and though we hadn't touched, hadn't spoken anything that could be repeated, I knew the truth was already between us like a held breath. Daniel didn't notice, of course. He barely acknowledged the graduation photos on the fridge, and when I mentioned how handsome Alec looked, he grunted, not even looking up from his phone. I watched him from across the table, this man I once shared everything with, and felt nothing but the hollow ache of distance. That night, I stayed awake long after Daniel's soft snores filled the bedroom. I stared at the ceiling, trying not to remember the feel of Alec's arm brushing mine as we lay in that quiet, unspoken intimacy. Trying not to recall the way he had looked at me in the dim glow of his room. It wasn't desire. Not exactly. It was need. Recognition. A desperate grasping for something warm and real. The next morning, Alec found me in the kitchen. His hair was tousled. He wore a plain black tee and gray joggers, the kind that made him look older than he was. More like the man he was becoming than the boy I had helped raise. "You didn't sleep much," he said quietly. I smiled, keeping my gaze fixed on the coffee machine. "Neither did you." He moved beside me, close enough that I felt his presence before I saw it. We stood side by side, not touching, letting the silence swell between us. "You were going to say something last night," he said. "Before I came to your door." I hesitated. My fingers clenched around the handle of my coffee mug. "I was going to tell myself not to come," I whispered. "That's all." He nodded. But I saw the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. We sat at the table. The morning light spilled through the blinds. Warm and soft, like it wanted to wrap itself around us and hold us there. "Do you ever think about how lonely people get?" Alec asked suddenly. I turned toward him, startled by the question. "All the time," I said. "Especially when they're surrounded by others." He looked at me, then really looked. "That's how you feel with Dad, isn't it?" I blinked. The truth struck too close. "Alec, you don't have to lie," he said gently. "I see it. I've seen it for years." I swallowed hard, setting my coffee down. "Marriage is complicated." "No, it isn't," he said, voice low but firm. "Love is simple. Either you give it or you don't." I didn't have an answer for that. 'Cause he was right. Later that day, I tried to busy myself. Cleaning the same shelf 3 times, organizing the spice rack, folding laundry I didn't care about. I kept waiting for the feelings to subside, for the guilt to drown the flickers of longing. But it never came. Only silence. And Alec's quiet footsteps down the hall. By late evening I was curled up on the couch, knees tucked under me, pretending to read. He passed by behind me, then stopped. "You want to watch something?" he asked. I nodded, afraid to speak. He sat beside me, closer than before. I could feel the warmth of him. We watched a movie I didn't follow at all. I heard only the rhythm of his breathing, the subtle creak of the couch when he shifted, the soft rustle of his hand as he reached for the blanket and draped it across both our laps. His arm brushed mine. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. We sat that way for over an hour, not saying a word, not moving, just breathing the same air, leaning toward the same invisible question we didn't know how to ask. And then, during a lull in the film, he turned to me and whispered, "Why are we pretending?" Froze. His voice was low, nearly inaudible. But the question shook something loose inside me. "I'm not pretending," I said. "I'm surviving." Alec's jaw tightened. He nodded once, slowly, and looked away. A minute passed. Then another. He stood. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick. "For what?" "For feeling things I'm not supposed to feel." The room tilted. I stood too, grabbing his hand before he could walk away. His eyes met mine, startled, searching. "You think you're the only one," I whispered. His fingers trembled. "You feel it too?" he asked. I couldn't speak. Instead, I pulled him into a hug. Desperate. Not like the hugs I'd given him growing up. This was different. And he knew it. His arms wrapped around me, holding me like I was something fragile, something sacred. His cheek pressed against my temple. We stood that way, suspended in something neither of us had words for. When we pulled apart, our eyes lingered. Still we said nothing more. He walked away, slow and heavy. And I stood in the living room, heart shattering under the weight of everything we couldn't say. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid of Alec, but because I was afraid of myself. Every second of our embrace replayed in my mind. His heartbeat against mine, the way he held me as if I'd fall apart otherwise, the way neither of us had spoken after I confessed what I hadn't meant to say aloud. That I felt it too. The next morning the house felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by everything we couldn't undo. I lingered in bed, pretending not to hear the quiet creak of the stairs, the soft clatter of Alec making coffee like he always did. I wanted the illusion of distance. I needed it. But when I finally emerged, he was already waiting at the table. One cup in front of him, one across from him. He'd made mine just how I liked it. Pause. He looked up. "Good morning." His voice was even, but his eyes held questions neither of us wanted to answer. "Morning," I said, taking my seat slowly. We drank in silence. Not tense, not awkward, just heavy. As though each sip held the memory of something forbidden. "You okay?" he asked. I hesitated. "No. But I'm functioning." He nodded. "Same." That was it. No deep conversation. No unraveling. Just quiet, shared acknowledgement. But all day I felt his eyes on me. Not always directly. Sometimes from the hallway. Sometimes through the window as I worked in the garden. Sometimes when I turned just in time to see him look away. He was watching me not like a son watching his mother, but like a man trying to understand the contours of a woman he thought he already knew. That evening, Daniel came home late from work. He gave me a kiss on the cheek that barely touched skin and walked right past Alec with a grunt. I watched him disappear into the den, already on his phone, already lost in another world. Alec and I sat across from each other at dinner, picking at our food while Daniel scrolled through news articles on the couch. Family of 3 in one house. Worlds apart. Alec broke the silence. "Can I talk to you later?" The question was directed only at me. Daniel didn't hear. Or maybe he didn't care. I nodded once. That night, long after the dishes were done and the lights were off, I heard the soft knock. I didn't answer with words. Just opened the door. He stood there in pajama pants and a plain black hoodie. His hair a mess from lying down. His eyes were tired, vulnerable. And something else. "I couldn't sleep," he said. I stepped aside. He entered quietly, then hesitated near the bed. "Do you want me to go?" "No," I whispered. "Just sit." We sat on the edge of the bed, side by side. Our knees brushed. "I've been trying to figure it out," he said. "Why this is happening. Why now? Why with you?" I swallowed hard. "Me too. I know it's wrong," he whispered. "But it doesn't feel that way when I'm with you." That's what terrified me most. That it didn't feel wrong. Felt natural. Like finding something I'd lost a long time ago and didn't know how to name. He turned to me. I've watched you disappear, Mom. The word hit hard. Not because of what it meant, but because of how gently he said it. You've been vanishing for years, he went on. Dad doesn't see it, but I do. Every time he walks past you. Every time he forgets you're there. I looked down at my hands. You deserve more, he said. I know, I said softly. But it's not supposed to come from you. He nodded, but his voice was steady. Then why does it feel like I was meant to give it to you? I stared at him. Not because of the words, but because I had thought them myself, in the darkest corners of my solitude. You shouldn't say things like that, I murmured. I know, he said. But I needed to. Because if I don't say them, I'll explode. We sat in silence again. Then slowly he reached for my hand. Not boldly, not possessively, just a small warm gesture. Honest and trembling. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. And I didn't pull away. Because there was no one else who knew me the way he did. No one else who had seen the whole of me and stayed. He leaned closer, forehead almost touching mine. I'm not asking you for anything, he whispered. I just want you to know. I feel it too. My eyes stung. I placed my hand against his cheek, and he leaned into it. Not like a boy needing comfort, but like a man quietly falling apart. I wish we could be different people, I said. He nodded. But we're not. We sat that way until the air around us felt like it might break from the weight of everything unspoken. Then he stood. I should go. Yes, I whispered. He turned to leave. But before he stepped out, he paused. Thank you. For what? For not pretending. Then he was gone. And I sat in the dark, my hand still warm where his had been, and cried for everything I couldn't change. It was nearly 2 weeks before we spoke alone again. Not because we avoided each other. In fact, it was the opposite. We orbited carefully, cautiously, like two stars locked in a quiet gravity. Always aware. Never colliding. There were glances in the kitchen, long silences in passing, shared tasks that became slow dances of unacknowledged closeness. Alec stood behind me one afternoon while I washed dishes, reaching past for a plate. His chest brushed against my back, and I felt the breath in my lungs freeze. He didn't speak. Neither did I. But we stayed in that position a moment longer than reason allowed. Daniel never noticed. He hadn't touched me in months, hadn't asked how I was. Hadn't even remembered the date of Alec's graduation until I showed him the framed photo. He's grown up, was all he said. No smile. No warmth. That night, Alec asked if I wanted to go for a drive. Just to get out, he said. Just to breathe. I agreed. We drove without a destination, windows down, the summer air thick with the scent of jasmine and asphalt. Music played low. Soft guitar, voices almost lost in the hum of the engine. Neither of us spoke. Words had become too dangerous. Eventually, he pulled into the empty lot by the lake, the same one we used to visit when he was a boy, to feed ducks and skip stones. Back then I was everything to him. And now, somehow, I still was. We sat in silence. Then he spoke. I've never felt this way before. His voice was quiet. Not afraid, just honest. Neither have I said. He turned toward me. What do we do with it? I don't know. But it's real, he said. He nodded. I know. His fingers found mine on the center console. We didn't look at each other. Just sat, hands touching, silence swelling like a tide. The air in the car was thick with everything we weren't saying. The lake shimmered outside, dark and still. Fireflies blinked in the trees like slow, pulsing stars. I hate that it's wrong, he whispered. Closed my eyes. So do I. But I don't want to forget it. I didn't either. He turned, and this time I let myself look. His eyes were steady, full of something I couldn't name, but knew by heart. There was no lust in them, no recklessness, only love, and fear, and a kind of unbearable knowing. We didn't kiss, but our faces were close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. I wish I had met you some other way, he said. Some other life. I blinked back the burn in my throat. Me too. And for a long time we just stayed like that. Two people on the wrong side of a beautiful truth. Back home, I stood at the threshold of his room, unsure why I had come. He looked up from his bed, startled. You okay? I hesitated, then nodded. Can I lie down? Just. For a minute. He moved aside without a word. I lay down beside him, fully clothed, arms at my sides. The ceiling above us was the same one I had stared at through his childhood, during fevers, nightmares, long talks about planets and dreams. Now we lay side by side, neither asleep nor awake. The room felt like it belonged to no time, no world. You've always been the one who saw me, I whispered. Even before I knew I was disappearing. He turned his face to me. You've always been my home. We didn't touch. But I felt it again, that invisible current. My eyes filled. Alec. What do we do now? He looked at me, expression so tender it broke something in me. We don't cross the line. But we don't pretend it never existed. He nodded. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I'll never hurt you, he said. Not ever. I know, I said, barely a whisper. And then, for the first and last time, I kissed his cheek. Softly, reverently, like the kiss of a closing chapter. Good night, I said. He watched me go. It's been months since that night. We don't speak of it. But it lives between us like a gentle ghost. Our relationship didn't vanish. It changed. Evolved. Tempered itself with understanding. A choice. Daniel remains the same. Distant, distracted, a shadow of what once was. But Alec, he visits more often now. Not with questions. Not with longing. But with quiet companionship. We drink coffee on the porch. Share long, wordless afternoons. Laugh at old memories. Every now and then, he brushes his hand against mine. And we both remember. That once, in a moment out of time, we saw each other as no one else ever had. And then we let go. Because love, real love, is not always about what you take. Sometimes it's about what you refuse to break.